Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Anarata Bashaliva, along with co-host Dr. Victor Fett, Dr. Katerina Shrey, and our program producer, Professor Larry Sherey. We host a weekly discussion panel on Russia's war on Ukraine with guests from Ukraine, military experts, medical personnel, academics, artists, literary figures, and relief workers. Our panel is recorded and circulated nationally and internationally. We appreciate your comments and feedback. Special thanks to Marshall University Libraries and MUIT for making this weekly event possible. If you are joining us live on Teams, please feel free to use the chat to post any question for our guest. A quick greetings to our viewers in Ukraine from Professor Katerina Shrey.
Вітаємо наших слухачів в Україні з глибоким покліном. Ми далі свідки вашого страшного терпіння і також вашої великої сили. Дякую вам за вашу участь в нашій тижневій програмі.
Thank you, Katerina. Today's guest will be introduced by Professor Victor Fett.
Hello, everyone. I'm very honored and pleased to welcome today our contributor, Miguel Dams, who speaks to us from Portugal. Miguel is a volunteer of an informal group of help, humanitarian help for Ukraine, and he has been with us exactly 1.5 years ago for the first time. His talk today is titled 3 years later, What Stays With Me. Please, Miguel, microphone is yours.
Thank you, Victor, and thank you, everybody, and вітаю. Добрий день. Дякую for the invitation. It's an honor to meet you all and to get to know you, because when time goes by, what stays with me after 3 years is that many people give up. The humanitarian aid is a process that needs commitment, and we understand every day by day with the development of political and economical and other geopolitical situations and discussions, a lot of space is being opened for different kinds of propaganda. So this makes the majority of people also step back and decide to wait to see what is going on. And this brings, of course, many doubts in many people if we are doing the right thing, if we are with the right partners, if we should change routes and do something else. And this is the world of voluntary humanitarian aid helpers, and probably not different in the States. Here in Portugal, although we are nearer to Ukraine, it happens. People just give up and say, I'm tired, and I'm tired of the war. I'm tired of seeing the war on TV. I'm tired of listening to different kinds of demands and discussions, and there's a lot of distraction going on. And so what stays with me is the resilience that I have learned from Ukrainians and a bunch of marvelous people here that are still available to continue helping to do the right thing. We discussed this a lot. We already spoke many times about the humanitarian aid process, about the different stages of a humanitarian aid process in this kind of development, like the war in Ukraine. And it's difficult sometimes not to repeat ourselves because things take a lot of time to change, take a lot of time to have important decisions. Many people talk a lot, especially politicians. I think personally, I'm not getting into a political analysis because it's not my aim. What stays with me is emotions. From day one thing that moved us all are the emotions that are involved in something that we cannot understand in the 21st century. Gaining the conscience of the importance of this dealing with emotions is the first phase. In the first phase, which I consider the first phase, the first steps, getting conscious in what we are getting into. Foreign country. As you know, Portugal is on the opposite side of Europe to Ukraine. We have a very nice, very peaceful, very sunny country where things actually are very peaceful in every sense, even political sense, although we had just last week elections again. But the difference and the distance brings people to these mixed feelings, where at the beginning of the second invasion, even TV journalists wept tears giving the news, and nowadays it's something so common and commonly spoken as if it would be just a tactical question and issue. So when we began 3 years ago to join efforts in Portugal to do the humanitarian aid, it was spontaneous, it was not organized. It was moved through social media and friends groups and WhatsApp and Facebook and so on. And we started organizing in a spontaneous way anything we were not taught to do, anything that we thought would be very important as a help. So the beginning, February, March, at the beginning of March, there was I would say the second phase. It was the wake-up call. What is really needed in Ukraine? How can we really help? And this was the stage when a lot of refugees, which had contacts with Ukrainians that already lived in Portugal, were referenced. And there were a lot of buses leaving Portugal, going to Poland to pick up these refugees and to help them get here as fast as they could. It was a very moving and touching moment, and this is one of the moments that stays with me until today, is meeting people for the first time in real life and seeing with our own eyes, escaping from their own country with a plastic bag, and that's it. The whole life in a plastic bag, and many times not even a plastic bag, just the clothes they had on them. And this was the moment, the turning point, I think, for many people, many volunteers that did not expect this emotional shock and impact. And I can speak for myself the same way. I was very, very moved when a mother tried to hand me over her son, because she had another one in Ukraine, and she had to choose which one she would send away, and it was the youngest, of course, and because the oldest was already in the military, in the city defense military, so she had to. Her option was to ask for someone that she didn't know to take her son to safety, and this stays until today. I've seen many terrible things in between, and but this moment was the moment that touched me the most. Concerning volunteers, when we came back from this second mission and third mission, we lost count how many missions we did. We understood also that we were not prepared, we were not taught how to feel and how to deal with these emotions, and looking for psychological support in Portugal, there was none existing for volunteers of humanitarian aid missions. It was something new, although we knew it existed all around the world, but in Portugal itself, this was, I think, one of the conflicts, or the conflict, where most people got involved. So we created a program with a hospital, with the psychiatric and psychological department, and it was a program that was developed and created for this mean, to help volunteers to learn how to cope with the emotions. So what I understood on that time frame is that everything is possible. If it doesn't exist, we can do it if we do it. If we do the first step and we take initiative. And this is also one thing that stays with me, this private and personal and initiative of anybody can change a little bit of our surrounding, of our society and world. So we learned a lot. After this mission, there comes the ease and more organized phase where institutions and associations gather and start to do the first planning, the real planning of humanitarian aid. You can imagine the spontaneous will to give and to help. Many people gave a lot of things that were useless, like used clothes and textiles, and sometimes in bad shape, because instead of throwing away just to give as humanitarian aid, but understandable. And this was the phase where we started getting together and really planning the missions. So if you want to ask anything in between, please do. Okay. I met Natalia Camille. She has an association that supports immigrants in the near Porto, in the region of Porto, the city I live in the north of Portugal. And she is one of the Ukrainians I got to know that is more involved and doesn't give up. Tomorrow we will celebrate the Vyshyvanka Day, because tomorrow is Sunday and people are available. It was already this week. But she's always very active and trying to do anything which is possible to do to help her own country and fellow countrymen and women. So and there we started to organize every mission every week with a more, would say, almost professional way, planning with sponsorships, with events, creating events. We did a wonderful event on the first year, after the first year of the invasion. And this gathered a community in Porto that is still helping, not all the community, unfortunately, but a lot of them are still on board and still calling and asking, what can we do next? And this shows us that solidarity has no borders, has no nationality. And I'm very grateful for meeting these people and knowing these people. Some of them are my friends since I was almost born. We took altogether 24 trucks with humanitarian aid. And I went personally to accompany almost all the trucks. Took some ambulances and a lot of equipment for like generators and medicals and medications and a lot of medical equipment to Ukraine. Especially we used Uzhgorod as a distribution city because it was nearer to the border. At the beginning, people were a little bit afraid to going into Ukraine. It's a country that is in war, and the reality doesn't come exactly as it is in our news. People are not very well informed, and but anyway, it produced a whole network of contacts of trustworthy and marvelous people in Ukraine. And today we have this network working still weekly basis, understanding the needs and where we can and are available to help. So this phase of the fourth phase, I consider this the fourth phase is the more modern part of this last year, where filtering information is a very difficult part of coping with all this situation, of all the conflict. The politicians taking so long to take decisions in Europe, and all the differences of opinion in the geopolitical world altogether opens up, in my opinion, the way for the propaganda to work. I know that we have propaganda on both sides, but usually the propaganda that takes the easiest way is to find justifications. And this last year is the most complicated part, is to, I cannot turn on TV. There are so many commentators doing commentaries on the war, on the justification of the war. If A or B are right or wrong, and people that never left the country probably, and they know a lot of this information. So this is the part where majority of the volunteers jumped out this last year. Unfortunately, we are still here and we're still available, but there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of chaos. Who is involved? With whom you are getting involved? A lot of interests are in stake. Political interests, Ukrainian political interests in Portugal, different groups. They tend to, instead of uniting people, tend to create a difference between the good and the bad Ukrainians. For me, Ukrainians are Ukrainians. I understand that there are differences. I respect those differences. It's not for me to discuss them or to point out some preference. I think Ukraine united, as I saw it since 22, is now in the diaspora in Portugal, at least, divided. This makes me sad. I would love to do something to help uniting people, but it's not my role, unfortunately. The only thing I can say is that we try with example, and by giving the example, to help to do the right thing and to leave the political action by side. You are all very quiet. You know my story already because I told it 1.5 years ago.
Yes,
Miguel,
thank you.
Just jump in after
Katerina,
the
please.
question? Yeah. So when you say they're divided, the people in the diaspora, the people in the refugee community, can you go into a little bit more detail? Divided along what lines? Whether the war should stop, how to proceed with the war? What's the point of contention between the different groups of Ukrainians?
Well, actually, it's more political, in the political sense. There's a lot of money for institutions, for associations. There are a lot of subventions, and there are leaderships of some associations. And when there's money in stake, the association that has more interests tells and says publicly that the other one is pro-Russian, for example. And this is something very disgusting, because I know many people that are targeted in this way. I know that they don't have the least interest in making any profit out of it, but they are sometimes on the way of these associations and political connections that they have with embassy and consulates and whatever. I personally, I'm very well known here, and even in Ukraine, I never got a phone call from anyone. I didn't expect it, and I'm not expecting it. But I know why I don't get a phone call, because there are some Ukrainians that do not want to get involved into the political, profitable business, and they are considered pro-Russians. This is absolutely ununderstandable. So, and this divides mistrust. This creates mistrust between some Ukrainians, not all, but some Ukrainians, and mistrust also in the society, in the Portuguese society, because we don't know the problems you have in Ukraine, the traditions, the svobodas, and the we don't know the story. I know it already, but generally we don't know, and we don't want to know because it's too complicated. And there are always 10 sides to a story, not 10. If you are from Lviv, you have one side of the story. If you are from Uzhhorod, you have another side. If you are from Odessa or from Kiev or from Zaporizhia, you have another one. And it's very difficult in a foreign country to understand who is really right. So these are the things I understand happen in my own country in the political sense. We have still a communist party. We have the far right was now elected as the second most voted party. I know the people personally, some of them, and I know that they are not far right as they say, and I know some communists that are not that communist as they say because they have a big Mercedes or a Ferrari or whatever. I mean, there's a lot
I
of
appreciate this. That's a really good explanation. We have this too, of course, in the United States. I appreciate your clarification, and it is sad. It is very, very sad when Ukrainians turn on one another to advance their own specific causes as opposed to uniting for the greater cause. It is heartbreaking. But thank you, though, for that great explanation and for everything you're doing. I'm going to jump back off, but for everything you're doing, thank you so much.
You know what is happening in Ukraine is a big example for Europe, and I don't think the majority people of Europeans understand what's behind of all what is going on. And when I mean, it's not the reasons for the war. That's absolute nonsense. No, I mean culturally, to defend your culture, to defend your traditions, to defend your nationality, your identity. Is something so basic. We have it in the books, we have it in the Constitution, so we take it for granted. We don't know anymore. We knew a couple of 50 years ago, but we don't know anymore what it is to have to fight for freedom, to have to fight for it, and to having family members separated and killed and friends lost. And this is something that these are the values that move me and inspire me a lot, because it's something that I want to pass on to my daughter as an example, because we have to identify ourselves with something. We have to know where we came from and where we are going to. And if we don't do anything, if we just sit and wait that somebody does it, nothing will happen. And the worst will always win. So I don't care if I don't get the phone call from A or B or C. I really don't care. I have my phone agenda full. But not receiving a phone call of a thank you or do you need something or whatever is a result of these kinds of small fights that are being taken advantage of the Russians. They love this. Divide to conquer, and this is giving them an advantage which we don't want. And if people get divided, and if the diaspora does not unite, you can be tall, short, curly, bald head. It doesn't matter if you are from Lviv, from Odessa, it should not matter, but people just don't care. And this comes also into public. People understand that. And when you try to fight inside each other, things work not that good. And this is, I'm very sad. I did some written explanations to Ukraine, to governmental departments. Never got an answer, but I don't expect an answer. I just wanted them to let them know an opinion of somebody that is outside, that is watching everything from outside, watching it inside. And when I understand what is going on here in Portugal, to be honest, I'm really, really sad, because that's not Ukrainian, I know. And starting off with, to be honest, I didn't want to get involved in discussing about this, but I don't owe anyone. So
No. I apologize. I apologize so much. No, I think, and I'm sorry I'm sorry for even asking that, but I appreciate very much understanding a little bit more. Sadly, this has happened before. I think it happens to many countries where there used to even be this joke a long time ago when I was a kid about, and it had to do with different groups of Ukrainians in the diaspora, in the immigrant community wanting different things. And there used to be like this joke about how there are like little prison cells and they have different countries in them. And then there's one prison cell that has Ukrainians in it, but there's no lock on it. It's like, oh, why is there not a lock? Oh, because they won't let each other out. Like it's like one of those. And so these are very, very painful moments. And I do think many countries go through, many cultural groups go through this, but it's a valuable reminder. I think your message to define what you're saying, this idea of just unite behind the bigger idea is very important. And again, I apologize for drawing you in a direction that you weren't.
No, Katerina, I'm grateful because this is something that gets stuck. If I say that the embassy had no intervention whatsoever, and they know who we are, they know what we do, they have seen us on TV, on newspapers, everything, and nothing. And when we see and admire Zelensky for his determination and for what he stands for the whole country, he represents the country. When you see and speak with Ukrainians here and they are frustrated, the frustration comes over. So I'm not willing to do here a frustration speech, but just this is what stays with me after 3 years. And the resilience, it can take another 2 or 3. And we cannot just say, like Ursula von der Leyen, for example, we, Ukraine, we are behind you until it's until the end, until it's needed. And then nothing happens. So it's just blah, blah. I know that there are a lot of things that could have been changed by the European Union. Nothing was done. Just to come in the newspapers, just to take photos with protocols. Like, at the beginning, there were some, I would say, humanitarian tourists, people that are drawn to catastrophes, like people that stop on accidents, road accidents, to take pictures. The same curiosity, but this was not to take pictures, but to take pictures of themselves. We call it the Barbie syndrome. So that people went on humanitarian aid missions with the cell phone just to do the Instagram. This was a phase. Yeah, but it's human. Is it correct? No, but it's human. So we cannot change it, and it will always be there. This Barbie syndrome will always exist. And I know, and I knew at that time, there were a lot of critics and people are going just to take selfies with refugees and selfies at the border. I'm at the border and so on. And I told them, listen, this will go away in 2 weeks because people do this once and then it's forgotten. Then they go to their own lives and they will say, I already did my part and nobody can tell me anything. And it happened. And nowadays, when I post something about helping Ukraine, I get less, but still some comments like, oh, if you need something, call me. So this person that writes this publicly, generally, not all, but generally, is the one that will not answer the call. Or when he answers the call, they say, oh, not this week, next month, next time, not this time. So blah, blah, blah. The world is full of blah, blah, blahs.
Yeah. Which makes me appreciate very much your consistent, steady, resolved, and determined help for all these years at this point. And I know I'm going to yield to Victor in a second, but I just wanted to ask, you pointed out earlier that humanitarian aid, when people like donate old clothes and with the best of intentions, but not necessarily understanding what's necessary. I would imagine the most helpful contribution is cash so that you can go buy the medical supplies, the food, the water. I would imagine that's the case, but perhaps it is not. What is a good humanitarian donation for humanitarian aid?
Even if I wanted to, I could not write a manual because I've been involved in other situations, not only in Ukraine. Okay, many years before, I was in Iraq, I was in Syria, and Lebanon. I was in different countries doing some assistance. Doesn't matter now, but it was always different. And even in Ukraine, the needs were changing on a daily basis. I can tell you the most interesting conversation I had with the first 2 trucks. Well, actually, it was 6 trucks. I took it at once to Uzhgorod, and then we had a meeting with Andrei. He was there coordinating the distribution, and he was saying, "Thank you very much, Miguel. The food very much appreciated, and the clothes and so on." We didn't know actually what to take, so we took everything, from diapers to wheelchairs to everything. And I said, "But what do you need? Because I see the supermarkets are fully supplied. I see shopping malls open and working, and some shops working on the western part of Ukraine." And he says, "Yeah, well, we need guns and ammunition." And I said, "Then I cannot help you with that, sorry." But then I started to do a local-based, every time we went to Ukraine, we did analysis of what was actually needed. And we spoke with different partners in different parts of the country. From Caritas to governmental associations to refugee centers, and a list was always established of what was needed. So, and that's what I said, we started doing the plan and planning. We focused on basic, special, very defined needs. We took trucks full of medication for elderly people, for diabetics, for medication that was needed, especially for elderly people that stayed behind and did not have access, or not have, didn't have, even the pharmacies didn't have enough medications, and hospitals. And then we took for small medical units, let's call them not hospitals, but units, took some medical beds and equipment. And so it was, every mission was different. Every mission was an adventure. There were missions that were cheaper from the financial perspective, and there were missions that had to cost a couple of millions. So it was a very interesting process, and a very active and very, there was no repetition. Okay, there was nothing, no repetition. We didn't take the same truck twice. So it was very, very interesting in that sense. And this involved also a bigger part of the community, because everybody played its part and gave its donation, either financially to support the buying. In the winter, for example, we took, when the politicians were here discussing how much or where would they spend the 200 million they had budgeted, we took hundreds of generators. We bought everything, every generator everywhere. And instead of talking and waiting and waiting that somebody takes the decision, we took action. And this is even more spontaneous by Ukrainians that are here, refugees. They were and are still this group of around 60 volunteers, 2 more, 2 less, because some moved already back to Ukraine, and about 60 people that are always constantly active, looking for a solution and for the needs. Of course, the needs were then, the last year, I would say, the tendency was more for the military aid and not for the civilian society. And that's not what we can provide.
Well, it's an impressive operation you've got going. The fact that you can respond in real time to what the local community needs is amazing, and understandable. You can't respond to the military request. That's completely understandable. I know that Victor had his camera on, so I'm going to pitch it to Victor. Thank you, Miguel. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything you're doing.
Thank you very much, Katerina. I will yield microphone to anyone who wants to ask a question next, but let me shift a little bit here to cultural aspect. I know that one of the major sources of Russian propaganda up to the very top are some bizarre historical claims based on mangled and imaginary history. So I wonder to what extent in Portugal specifically, since in my understanding, Portugal is one of the first modern colonial empires which went through this painful process of post-colonial recognition, what with Africa and even Brazil. Is there an understanding that Russian Empire, in fact, never fell apart, and under the guise of Soviet Union or modern federation still makes the same claims which Europe abandoned hundreds of years ago, technically speaking? So this understanding of, as I understand, being embraced in this culture, we were taught that greatness of our culture in Russia in Soviet times depended directly on international union of all these people, our republics who gladly separated back in 91 and keep doing so. So I wonder if these Russian claims, modern Russian claims, take any traction, take any gain in Europe, specifically considering experience of former colonial empires.
Well, let me put it like this. On our time of Portuguese colonies, we didn't have TV, so propaganda was just not needed because it was orders, and the orders were fulfilled or not. What happened is that the Second World War brought us some consciousness of West-East, but historically we had our own problems until 1974. We had a dictatorship in Portugal, and then in 1974 we had the Red Carnation Revolution, where people still today try to make profit, political profit out of it, because it's used to divide the Portuguese society. It's used to from especially from socialist, communist parties, left-wing parties, is used the Red Carnation as a symbol of freedom and against the dangerous right and conservative politicians and the boogie, the conservative boogie, and people are getting now, especially young people that have access to information through internet, through even ChatGPT, and are using resources that we never thought of before, focused on national decisions and national history, international history, like the Russian Empire. We know, generally speaking, of course, there are some brilliant minds in Portugal, people that study it and actually know what they speak about and talk about. But the big majority just understands that Putin is following his imperialistic mentality. And to be honest, people don't know much more about it because the propaganda is so mixed. Our TVs are very left-oriented, very, very leftist. And there are a lot of commentators on television that are pro-Kremlin. They deliver like a cartilla, we call it, like a open speech of lies and propaganda. And people know it and just don't want to care anymore, just like I don't want to hear it anymore because it doesn't interest us to understand better what is behind the whole historic difference, even in Ukraine, Russia, even inside Ukraine, inside Russia, Siberia, and Georgia, and so on and so on. Not very interested in Western Europe, unfortunately. And here, I think that the Ukrainian government could do more through the embassies, through the consulates, to inform the cultural inheritance and the cultural importance of Ukraine, and just to focus on that to the future and forgetting a little bit the past, because the past will not change.
Thank you. We see those trends all over Europe and, of course, in the United States also, where knowledge of history and even geography is much poorer, of course. Please, anyone in the panel who wants to ask a question,
okay.
please, Anara.
No, after Efim.
Yeah, Efim, please.
Oh, yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great.
Yes,
Thanks.
yes.
Okay. It's nice to see you, Miguel. I believe I was present to your first presentation some time ago here. My question was sort of, with a little overlap with what Victor just asked. And I'll get to my question, but first I want to mention that the first time I was in Portugal, I was included the 25th of April, 37th anniversary, actually. This was in Ponta Delgada, and big celebration of Revolução dos Cravos. I was actually able to buy in a bookstore there a third grade manual on history and sort of social studies, where glorified from those years, glorified Estado Novo, and that kind of stuff. So sort of kind of strange reminder of that. I guess my question is, you touched a little bit on the fact that there are voices in the media and maybe some government as well that sort of parrot Kremlin's point and that kind of stuff. And I also understand the point that some people, there may be some fatigue with helping and all that kind of stuff. But sort of general mood, let's say, if you walk around Porto or Lisbon, like, do you see Ukrainian flags? I just came back from Denmark,
Yes.
and there are big flags right on the city hall and other places. Same in Norway. I wonder, like, what sort of, at least a passive mood in Portugal is right now.
I can tell you about Porto, my city. Okay, we had
which I love.
It's a beautiful city, yes. For example, we had Ukrainian flags all over. We had the municipal theater, actually, with a big symbol of the Ukrainian flag, with Ukrainian colors. And it was last year, they took it off. Just didn't want to get any more involved politically. I mean, the city hall. There were no events anymore, even for the second year of invasion, third year of invasion. The mood is life goes on. Where I see still some Ukrainian flags is on the small tourist shops that are funnily used. They are owned by Indians and Pakistanis, and they have these souvenir shops. Some of them have Ukrainian flags, and of course Ukrainians that have the flag on their windows, but you don't see the flag anymore as you saw it in the first year. Okay, first and maybe still in the second year. We see it in our events. We organize events. As I told you, tomorrow we are having an event on here in Rio Tinto, near Porto, and Vishivanka. It's a lunch with Vishivankas and some music, some Ukrainian music, where Ukrainians are gathering and having some marvelous snacks that they prepare, like the salo, which I love, and I learned to love it. And less people are joining. Even Ukrainians. They are not anymore the first vague. We have tens of thousands of Ukrainian refugees, tens of thousands, 30, 40,000 Ukrainian refugees. In these events, we see cultural events, 100, maybe 150 people gathering. If there is a more motivated protests, which doesn't involve a lot of effort, just going there with the flag, we see maybe 500-600 in Porto, but not many more. People just keep on their lives. Concerning Estado Novo, yes, well, the 25th of April, not anymore, but until a couple of years ago, there was still a big division between Portuguese that would like to have Salazar back due to corruption and people that are against Salazar. And this is, I think it's starting to get démodé, and people are not talking that much anymore. So I thank God, because dividing people, this is what bothers me a lot. If we are one country, we should be united and not divided. And the divisions, they bring extremisms. And I also always say that the lack of courage of politicians opens the path for extremisms, left and right, and the division of people. And I would not like to see it in Ukraine happening at all, because I know for a fact that you are able to unite, because I have seen it with my own eyes. Different minorities gathering for one purpose in Ukraine. Outside of Ukraine, it's not. Here in Portugal, it's not the same thing anymore. So I hope that this message also goes over to whom it should concern, and maybe there's a positive influence of speaking openly. And this is where I don't mind, Katarina, when you asked me. I'm not afraid of anyone, because I don't owe anything anyone. That I don't see a lot of efficiency by the official entities here, not even in the propaganda sense, because we don't have a lot of influence with our public audience.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to mention that, with this elementary school textbook that I got, not surprising, but was still interesting how similar it was to some, textbooks we had, when I was in elementary school in the Soviet Union.
I imagine. Yeah. Well, in Spain, it's not different with Franco. People still nowadays discuss what's right, what's wrong, because there's not this unity. There's not this sense of identity. I'm not speaking about nationalism. Attention, please do not misunderstand me. But having your own identity, providing your own culture, and this should be important to help us develop a little bit more who we are and where we are going to. Because if we don't do it, it doesn't happen.
All right, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Efim. Anara, please.
Thank you very much for your valuable observation and analysis of changing situation. I also would like to say that in US, in January, the US paused or stopped Uniting for Ukraine program. So there are more restrictions for Ukraine here. And my question is actually for you, how Europe and the US may help Ukraine and Ukrainians and Ukrainian refugees. So there's a huge difference between official refugees and displaced people, or people who are not still displaced, and we don't distinguish sometimes. So you see situation at grassroots level, and your analysis is very valuable for us. Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't know, you are all in the United States. I don't know if you have still a united community of diaspora, and if you separate these immigrants from many years ago from the actual refugees. This is now a question from me to you. How did you integrate them in the States?
I just wanted to know how you see this situation in terms of social plan. It's not just because it's on one hand we can see official documents, official discussion. On the other hand, you see the real situation that people sometimes don't know. Are they displaced person or refugee, or they just traveling? and so on. That's why it's more complex situation. That bureaucracy is actually may identify them, but in general, what you can, your recommendations for EU, European Union, and also the US, what should be done? Because you clearly described certain fatigue in discussion, in helping Ukraine and Ukrainian refugees, and just Ukrainian.
Well, I think first of all that Ukrainian people are very courageous, very brave, and we don't see on the street the difference. Oh, that's a refugee, or that's an immigrant. You integrate so quickly, and you don't look back. You just join the forces and start to work. I know from the refugees I met, all of them are working, are well integrated. They already speak our language. Some words, some more, some better, and some less better, but they are doing an effort. And this is something that we appreciate a lot, because you came here as an immigrant in the 80s, and the year 2000, a lot of immigrants came to Portugal from Ukraine, and that got integrated so fast we didn't even notice on a daily basis that we had immigrants from Ukraine, just by experience, having a worker. And I tell you, a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, they love to have Ukrainian people working, because you are very trustworthy and very hardworking people, and very correct and educated, and highly skilled, and with natural skills even, which is wonderful. So I cannot tell you if there is a difference. Of course, there is a difference in treatment. What gives the social aspect of refugees coming? They came, and we had the best conditions we could offer them, like having a pocket money, job, a place to stay, and the status of refugee is getting prolonged. So we know, and until the war finishes, we will have this status, and this goes all for all Europe. I'm pretty sure that maybe Hungary will not play along, and Slovakia, but the rest of Europe is providing the help that is needed, and the money for it. There's a lot of money, of course, but these are the political sides that are still working. I don't see, to be honest, don't see Ukrainians complaining, because everything is working fine for them. And what I see is a difference between foreigners, which is now the topic in Europe. Speaking about foreigners, having too many foreigners in our countries, in Germany, in France, today in Germany again, terrorist attacks, and this is on a day basis also. In Portugal, we speak also a lot about them, but Ukrainians are always an exception. We don't speak about Ukrainians because you are welcome. We know that you are actual, or that some are actual refugees. We also see Ukrainians working with a lot of success in Portugal, and earning a lot of money and living a very good life. So maybe this sometimes also helps. They don't need our help. It's just a political question of who gets it better, if Zelensky, if Putin, and who supports who makes the best profit out of it, if it's the United States, if it's Europe, if Europe does not decide what happens next, if comes China. This is the geopolitical game that nobody understands from the public correctly. And then you have a lot of propagandists that try to push either way their opinion and try to manipulate the public opinion. But generally, it's actually very sad to see we have a lot of bureaucracy in Europe, and that decisions that could have been taken 3 years ago are still being discussed. And probably the same happens in the States. But you helped more, the United States as a country helped more than many countries together in Europe. Not all Europe, all Europe all together as France and Germany and England, the northern countries, the Baltic countries, they help a lot. I know for a fact they are constantly helping. The South countries, not anymore. because it doesn't interest them, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Miguel. Well, we hope that things will have some positive change. It's indeed a very serious junction in history when Europe hopefully comes back from slumber and does more than they have so far. We see very slow changes of the tide in Europe, of course, from here, and very unfortunate turns here and there. Please, more questions to Miguel. We're near the end of our session, and I urge you to ask these and possibly, yes, Katerina, please.
Well, so not so much a question, but just sort of a follow-up to to that really good conversation just now between Anara and Miguel. So I'm in Philadelphia this week, and I came back for my nephew's graduation from the Ukrainian Saturday School, and it's always a wonderful thing to be back and immersed in the Ukrainian subculture in the Philadelphia area. And this is true in New York, Chicago, other cities where you have not just Ukrainian nationalities, but other, there's a Korean center of town, there's an Italian center and stuff. And so what I've been really touched and impressed and grateful the last couple of years, this distinction between immigrants and refugees. There is a very strong Ukrainian immigrant community in Philadelphia, and the refugees who are coming are very different culturally. They're coming mostly from Eastern Ukraine, whereas the immigrant community is largely from Western Ukraine. But what has been really very touching is how the refugees who come from Ukraine have hopefully a very soft landing. For example, there's a local college, Manor College. Manor College offers English as a foreign language classes to help get the refugees up to speed in their language abilities. There's a number of churches. There's a social services office that helps the refugees find employment and as they get their feet. And they are provided with a lot of support. And it is interesting because these are very different people. In the Ukrainian community here is very patriotic, very Ukrainian, very Ukrainian as in what they understood Ukraine to be 30, 40 years ago. And the refugees coming over are modern Ukrainians. And yet, thankfully, it's been a very, very gentle and wonderful and supportive event. It's been a very kind event. And so it makes me appreciate when we were talking about distinguishing refugees and immigrants, the immigrants who built the Ukrainian community here, I think they have very clearly in their memories what they or their parents struggled being new in a foreign land with a foreign language, and have really paved the way for our refugees here. So we've been very, very fortunate here. We're thank you, God. Fortunate here.
That's wonderful to hear. That's wonderful to hear, and it's very touching. And this is something that motivates and should motivate the majority of people. Doesn't matter which nationality you have. Is the sense of unity, and this cannot be destroyed by 2 or 3 idiots. Let me put it like this. And that's unfortunate when 2 or 3 idiots have so much power to try to tear this apart. I'm sorry, to tear this this majority, which I see in the States, of this sense of community and unity in a moment that is difficult for many people, because we are not speaking about a normal or crisis or financial crisis where people are just looking for a better life. No, it's people are looking to survive. And going back to the 3 idiots.
Well, we definitely have those in the past as well. One of the really visible signs of this is that as somebody who grew up Ukrainian in America, there was a strong emphasis on learning Ukrainian. My siblings and I, my generation, we all went to Saturday Ukrainian school. Our parents were adamant we learn Ukrainian. And they were very impatient with Ukrainians from Ukraine who spoke Russian, But that's not the case anymore. Now it's just an understanding that they are Ukrainian. They speak Russian because that is the language that they speak. And so that's been like a really nice visible sign where there's a lot more acceptance and tolerance. Even explanations. For example, someone explained to me that spasiba, which Ukrainians typically think of as Russian, actually is spasi Boże. And so that we have those roots as well, whereas our word дякую it's just Ukrainians, my point being, Ukrainians in the immigrant community, I've really appreciated the welcome expressed through being very accepting of people who are Ukrainian who happen to speak Russian, or a blend of Russian and Ukrainian. It's been very, very healing.
Katerina, thank you for speaking about that, because that's one of the other points that is happening still in Portugal between Ukrainians. I read it because I can read it and I understand. If somebody writes in Russian or Russian language or in Ukrainian language, or when people speak on Facebook and doing just some normal stuff, civilians, people, normal people, and they are immediately labeled by these idiots. I cannot stay quiet. I have to use this opportunity to put it out. And I will say, listen, Russia will always be your neighbor. Like Spain is our neighbor. We had wars with Spain for hundreds of years. Spain tried to invade us many times. And nowadays, we have a very civilized, I would say, living together. And I'm not saying that Russians and Ukrainians will get along in 20 years or in 10 years. I'm not saying that, but the future generations, I hope personally that people get the sense of respect, and that there's an evolution in the societies, and that maybe it will be peaceful, and hopefully it will be peaceful. And if you have this cultural inheritance of from former Soviet times, you have influence, you have still, listen, your public departments in Ukraine still work, some of them, with Soviet mentality, very bureaucratic, very slowly. And I would say that in Portugal, it still happens also. This influence is negative, and because it's easier not to do things and just to let it go. And it will take generations to make peace with the cultural difference and this imperialistic maniacs. And speaking Russian in Ukraine, being from Ukraine, from the east of Ukraine, doesn't matter. It's not a crime. It's your culture, and it should be respected. And I see respect in Ukraine. Of course, I understand that there are some people that prefer that Ukrainian language will be adopted as the main language. I understand that. I even support that. I agree. But Russian language is part of it. You cannot be criminalized of speaking Russian because you were born and taught Russian. The same way as let me put it on another perspective, associations that were during Soviet times in Portugal already, and they had meetings with the Russian embassies, and they had events, joint events, and let's be honest, the Russian regime always has been very intense and actually very, very good in propaganda and spreading the Russian, the Ruski Mir, and spreading the whole message to the world as a powerful nation and more powerful than others. And if you were invited to an event 20 years ago or 15 years ago, it doesn't mean that today you are pro-Russian. But people tend to use this because you were at an event and he was the Russian ambassador, for example. And these kinds of fights that happen should not happen, and they are harmful for Ukrainian future. They are very destructive, for this sense of unity that you have in those communities in the States. In Europe, I think it's more divided. I see it happen not only in Portugal, also in Spain and in Germany. It happens also. There are people that try to gain advantage of some whatever future political influence, or to be honest, I don't care. We just want to do the right thing and respect who needs to be respected. My mother is German. My grandmother was German, which today is Poland, from Katowice, and her father and brother were killed by Russians. So, and I don't hate Russians because of that, because I was not even born. It was not that, it was just family history. But then came Second World War, and my mother being German, she was born after the war. When I grew up, I was born in Portugal, but since I'm tall and my mother was German, everybody called me Miguel the German. And I heard along my life the whole time, Germans are all Nazis. And this is not true. It's idiot. There are some people that were, some people that didn't know what was going on. So history and generations will take over, and with time things will ease out. Because nowadays it's not anymore like that. 80 years passed, so people tend to understand not all Germans were Nazis. So we will know that not all Russians agreed with Putin. But this we don't know it today. We will know it maybe, if it's true, in 20, 30 years, which I don't doubt. And we know that Ukrainians, they are good Ukrainians, they are bad Ukrainians, they are good Portuguese, they are bad Portuguese. So we are humans, and we have to understand what's the best way to make it happen, that everybody gets along.
Thank you. Well said, Miguel. Thank you very much. I think we should end on this optimistic note, especially in times when there is not much optimism around. We always hope for the best and for the victory.
Slava
Thank
Ukraini.
you once again for being on our program. This was 169th week non-stop Marshall University MUkraine podcast, and we welcomed Miguel Dams from Portugal, a wonderful volunteer and contributor. We hope to hear you again, and please stay well.
I hope next time we will speak on a more peaceful and more happy reason, also for other situations, other conflicts in other parts of the world. And I'm always glad to see that you are safe and that you are keeping up your good job, Victor. Congratulations. And
Please stay safe.
You too.
Slava Ukraini.
Ukrainian greeting really quick.
Please do.
Дорогі браття і сестри в Україні, ми зберігаємо вас у наших щоденних думках і молитвах. Нехай милосердний Бог тримає вас у своїй опіці. До наступного тижня. Прощаємося.
Слава Україні.
Героям слава.
Слава.